In the summer of 1943, the Allied High Command decided to launch an invasion of France, and in particular Normandy, with the goal to open a second front in the European theatre of war. In this period, there were little over 40 German divisions in France and the Low Countries. Most of these divisions were infantry divisions for coastal defense, and there were only 6 German divisions which could be classified as either armored or mechanized divisions, and all of them were in the process of forming, training or rebuilding. There were, in other words, no experienced armored divisions at full strength on the Western Front. In this video I wish to further analyze and follow the German build-up of their tank force on the Western Front up to the eve of the D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944. We will have a look at the actual tank strength, the location of the main armored units on the Western Front, starting from the autumn of 1943. The reason to begin my analysis in October 1943 is because that month the decision was taken to convert 3 SS Panzer Divisions on the Western Front into full armored divisions and number them. These divisions were in the process of formation since the spring of 1943, and the formal upgrade in October meant that they were supposed to be beefed up in terms of tanks. The irony was that at this stage the divisions had hardly any armored vehicles at all. In terms of main battle tanks, the 9th SS Panzer Division was supposed to have 200 Panzer IVs, but had none, and the 10th SS Panzer Division was supposed to have 19 Panzer IIIs and 186 Panzer IVs, but it had only 3 Panzer IIIs and no Panzer IVs at all. Note that at this stage the Panzer III was being pulled out from frontline service and used for training purposes only. The 12th SS Panzer Division had no allocated tank strength at all. This meant that the 3 SS Panzer Divisions together had only 3 main battle tanks. The only consolation was that in terms of required assault guns, the 9th SS and the 10th SS had more assault guns than officially required. Besides the 3 SS Panzer Divisions in the process of training and equipping, there were 2 Panzer Divisions dedicated for replacements for regular armored divisions, so the so-called Reserve Panzer Divisions. We have no recorded tank strength for October 1943, but based on their strength in the spring of 1944, we can assume that they had a stable tank strength, and we will take their strength in spring 1944 as a reference point. Being training units, these divisions had only the equivalent of 1 weak tank battalion. Both divisions had in theory about 36 Panzer III and 18 Panzer IV on the roster. In reality, both divisions had a small surplus on both tank types and an additional battery of assault guns. Last but not least, there was the 21st Panzer Division, a division which was destroyed in North Africa in May 1943 and reconstituted in the summer of that year. The division was however equipped with mostly captured vehicles, most notably the tank battalion. In terms of German equipment, its full complement of 36 Panzer IV and 24 assault guns, but it was also supposed to have 54 Somua tanks and 32 Renault tanks. It had only a full complement of Renault tanks and was lacking 12 Somua tanks. Altogether, the tank strength of just a little more than 1 tank battalion. In autumn 1943, there were 6 Panzer Divisions on the Western Front which were seriously under strength in terms of tanks. There were only 90 Panzer III and 90 Panzer IV in total, or the equivalent of the strength of just 1 Panzer Division, besides 79 assault guns. In terms of deployment, the available Panzer Divisions were clustered at several points as follows. The 9th SS Panzer Division was sent to Antwerp region. in northern Belgium to form a cluster of 2 Panzer Divisions, and the 10th SS Panzer Division was sent near Marseille in southern France. It's interesting to see that all these Panzer Divisions were located near the 2 most important seaports on the Western Front, Antwerp and Marseille. The 2 Reserve Panzer Divisions were concentrated around Rennes, and the 21st Panzer Division was also sent there. It's not known to me why they were garrisoned at Rennes, but perhaps it was to protect the transport links to the submarine ports in Brittany. In December 1943, the German armored forces on the Western Front were reinforced by 1 SS Panzer Division and a training Panzer Division. Just like the other mobile SS divisions, the newly raised 17th SS Panzer Division had no armor at all, despite the fact that it should have a tank strength of 1 Panzer III and 93 Panzer IV and 31 assault guns. The division was raised in the context of a planned SS Panzer Corps, together with the 10th SS Panzer Division. Besides these planned organizational changes, the 10th SS Panzer Division was also undergoing changes itself. First, its envisioned complement of 186 Panzer IV was scaled down to 93 Panzer IV, while its complement of Panzer III was scaled up from 19 to 44. It did not change anything significant in terms of actual numbers of main battle tanks, because the only change was the arrival of 8 Panzer IV. The number of intended assault guns was also boosted from 31 to 84 to make up for the shortfall in Panzer IV. The number of actual assault guns remained nevertheless the same. Remarkably, the number of Panzer IV in the 9th SS Panzer Division was also scaled down from 200 to 41, but this was offset by a minor rise of the number of intended Panzer III and an augmentation of the authorized assault guns to 44. The last change was just a formalization of the reality, because the division had already 43 assault guns. In terms of main battle tanks, the division had only received 4 Panzer III and 27 Panzer IV so far, or the equivalent of roughly 2 companies. The nearby located 12th SS Panzer Division has received a more ambitious table of tank strength. The division was slated to have 6 Panzer III, 96 Panzer IV, 96 Panther tanks, besides 31 assault guns. This would make this division the first one on the Western Front to be formally outfitted with Panther tanks, the most modern German main battle tank at the time. Despite the planned strength, the division had only 11 Panzer IV at hand in the beginning of December 1943. Another significant development was the refitting of the 21st Panzer Division. The number of authorized Panzer IV was augmented from 36 to 110, while the division was planned to have 41 assault guns. The actual number had grown to 30 assault guns and 63 Panzer IV, while the number of French tanks had only slightly changed. As said, we have no solid documentation on the number of tanks of the Reserve Panzer Divisions, so we continue to rely on their numbers in spring of 1944. There was, however, an addition of the number of Reserve Panzer Divisions on the Western Front with the arrival of the 273rd Reserve Panzer Division. This division had an authorized strength of 72 Panzer III, 36 Panzer IV and 18 assault guns, while having only 34 Panzer III, 10 Panzer IV and 3 assault guns. This meant that in December 1943 the Western Front armored forces had a total of approximately 131 Panzer III, 173 Panzer IV, no Panther tanks and 109 and 30 assault guns. The available tanks would be barely enough to equip 2 Panzer Divisions, while the entire armored force on paper was 7 Panzer Divisions and 1 Panzergrenadier Division. In terms of location, the new Reserve Panzer Division was billeted near Bordeaux, while the 10th SS Panzer Division was moved to Normandy. The new SS Panzer Grenadier Division was positioned at Thouars, while the new SS Panzer Corps for these 2 SS divisions was officially forming in the area of Metz. For the Reserve Panzer Divisions near Rennes, a new Reserve Panzer Corps was created. By the end of the month, the Supreme Command of the German Armed Forces, the OKW, stated the following: "The concentration of enemy forces in southern England is almost completed. It can be expected that it will be complete by mid-February. From mid-February onwards, the start of the major enemy landing can be expected at any time." The Germans had, in other words, set a timetable for themselves to strengthen the Western Front to face an Allied invasion threat. For the moment, the situation of the German armored force in the West looked bleak, however. They had barely 300 main battle tanks, and these were divided among 7 Panzer Divisions, which were all in the process of forming, training and equipping. On paper, the 21st Panzer Division had experience in North Africa, but this division was basically destroyed in Tunisia in May 1943, and since then it was rebuilding from scratch with obsolete French tanks. In other words, there was not even one experienced armored division facing the invasion threat in December 1943. In January 1944, 2 new Panzer Divisions arrived on the Western Front, the 2nd Panzer Division and the Panzer Lehr Division. The former came from the Eastern Front for rest and refit in France, while the latter was a new division raised from demonstration units linked to tank schools in Germany. Although these divisions added numbers to the Western Front, they didn't add real tank strength. The 2nd Panzer Division had no tanks, and the Panzer Lehr only 2 Panzer IV. The arrival of Panzer Divisions on the Western Front with hardly any tanks put more strain on the efforts to outfit the newly created units already there, which is evident from the numbers. The strength of the 9th SS Panzer Division grew to 49 Panzer IV, the 10th SS Panzer Division to 26 Panzer IV, and the 12th SS Panzer Division to 40 Panzer IV, while the projected Panzer IV strength in the 12th SS was slightly increased. The Panzer IV strength of the 10th SS was decreased to almost half. The number of intended Panzer III was also decreased, while the 12th SS had a rise in the allocation of Panzer III to 23. But all these changes had no effect on the tank strength, which remained largely the same. None of the new SS Panzer Divisions had any Panthers, although the 10th SS had a planned upgrade to a strength of 96, just like the 12th SS Panzer Division. The 17th SS Division was apparently on the back of the line in terms of tank allocation, because it still had none. The 10th SS Panzer Division lost 1 assault gun. The Wehrmacht Panzer Divisions fared little better. The 21st Panzer Division and the training Panzer Divisions had virtually no growth in terms of tank strength. The 21st Panzer Division gained just a handful of assault guns. Overall, the Western Front had gained 2 armored divisions, but in reality these divisions brought literally only 2 tanks with them. The actual tanks at hand had not grown with the exception of the Panzer IV strength, which had gained a little over 70 tanks. The disposition of the units on the Western Front also remained largely the same. The newly arrived 2nd Panzer Division was billeted near Amiens, and the Panzer Lehr was assembling between Nancy and Verdun. The 1st SS Panzer Corps was located at Brussels, while the 2nd SS Panzer Corps was located at Alençon. The 7th SS Panzer Corps was scrapped however. Last but not least, the German armored force on the Western Front was put under the supervision of a new command, the so-called Panzergruppe West, which was located near Paris. By February 1st, 1944, the only remarkable change for the SS Panzer Divisions was the surge of Panzer IV tanks in the 12th SS Panzer Division to almost full strength and the removal of the allocation of assault guns to that division. The 12th SS also got its first batch of Panther tanks, just like the 9th SS Panzer Division. This meant that these divisions were developing their tank strength, but both divisions were still far off from the required numbers of Panthers. Interestingly, the required number of Panzer III for the 9th SS was almost doubled, while the required number of Panzer III in the 12th SS was downsized with a third. Either way, these divisions did not receive any additional Panzer III. The 10th SS and the 17th SS divisions were worse off among the SS mobile divisions, as both did not receive any new tanks, which meant that the 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division did not have any armor at all. They had become the Cinderellas of the Western armored force, even more so because their attendant command corps, the 7th SS Panzer Corps, had been disbanded during the previous month. The Wehrmacht Panzer Divisions were in this time frame clearly better off than their brothers of the SS. The 2nd Panzer Division received 44 Panzer IV, almost half of the required amount of Panzer IV. The most surprising growth was a surge in tanks for the Panzer Lehr Division. This new division did not only got 10 Panzer III, 30 Panzer IV, 10 assault guns, but also 3 Tiger tanks. Altogether 53 tanks. The division was not planned to have assault guns, and it got its full complement of Panzer III. It remained however well below the amount of planned Panzer IV and Tiger tanks. The 21st Panzer Division lost all its Renault tanks and 11 of its Somua tanks, in the process of phasing out the outdated French tanks, but gained 4 Panzer IV and 6 assault guns. Nevertheless, the 3 Wehrmacht frontline Panzer Divisions gained double the amount of tanks the SS Panzer Division received that month on the Western Front. The often talk about prioritization of the Waffen-SS over the Wehrmacht was certainly not taking place at the start of 1944. Remarkably, the new Reserve Panzer Division had a slight increase in strength with an increase of Panzer III, or just over half of the required strength. The number of Panzer IV more than doubled, but also remained just over half the required strength. Last but not least, the number of required assault guns was diminished by 4. The division was also placed under the command of the 58th Reserve Panzer Corps, which controlled all 3 Reserve Panzer Divisions in France as a result. In terms of accumulated numbers, the total number of Panzer III on the Western Front had grown to 148, Panzer IV to 395, Panthers to just 12, and assault guns to 144. Regarding the location of the Panzer Divisions, the only significant relocation was the move of the 9th SS Panzer Division from the training grounds in Belgium to the south of France. February 1944 saw another arrival of a better division from the Eastern Front, the 2nd SS Panzer Division. Just like its numerical namesake of the Wehrmacht, it did not bring any tanks to bolster the tank strength in the West. In terms of tank strength on the Western Front, there were several hundred main battle tanks, but by mid-February, the time when an Allied invasion would be possible any time, according to the German predictions, there were no regular Panzer divisions on the Western Front with a full complement of German main battle tanks. The best equipped Panzer divisions had just over 50% of its required tanks, but the average of all frontline armored divisions was only 35%. The Reserve Panzer Divisions were largely up to their required strength, but only with an average of 75 main battle tanks, or just below the equivalent of one tank battalion. Equipped with mostly Panzer III tanks, these divisions were actually unfit for genuine frontline service. The Panzer III had been phased out of production in the previous year, and remaining tanks were either converted to assault guns or training purposes. In this overview I have included Tiger tanks of the Panzer Lehr Division, because the division had an organic allocation of one company of Tiger tanks, just like the original 3 Waffen-SS Panzer Divisions had in the spring of 1943. The newly created SS Panzer Divisions in France never had an organic Tiger company in their order of battle. In January 1944, 2 SS heavy tank battalions arrived in France, which were by no means full-strength units, but in the process of formation. These battalions were formed from the aforementioned Tiger companies of the 1st and 2nd SS Panzer Divisions, and were destined to form the organic Tiger battalions of the different SS Panzer Corps. In February 1944, these battalions had a required allocation of 45 and 17 respectively, but the 101st had only 20 Tigers at hand and the 102nd had none. In the case of the latter, the tank training could not even start. By March 1st, some major adjustments of the German expectations to equip their Panzer divisions had been made. The required number of Panther tanks in the 12th SS was scaled down to 81 tanks, the loss of roughly one tank company. The Panzer IV requirement was decreased to 101 tanks, and the number of required Panzer III by half. Despite these decreases, the number of Panthers tripled, while the number of Panzer IV at hand actually decreased by 4. The 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division would no longer receive any Panzer IV or Panzer III, but instead the number of assault guns was significantly increased. The sole consolation for the loss of its intended tank battalion was the arrival of its first assault gun. The 2nd SS Panzer Division was also downgraded somewhat in terms of required Panthers and assault guns, but there was an increase of required Panzer IV and Panzer III, meaning that on paper they lost approximately 40 high-valued tanks in exchange for the same amount of lower-valued tanks, half of which were outdated Panzer III. In any case, the divisional tank roster on March 1st only counted 6 Panther, 5 Panzer IV, 4 assault guns and 5 Panzer III. In contrast to the relative downsizing of the 2nd SS Panzer Division in the number of required tanks, the 9th SS Panzer Division saw a relative and absolute increase of tanks. The number of required Panther tanks was augmented by 5, while the absolute number of Panthers at hand grew to 23. The number of required Panzer IV also grew by 5, without receiving any new tanks. The required number of tanks for the 10th SS Panzer Division was also adjusted to match the number of required tanks of the 9th SS Panzer Division, except for the Panzer III, which was significantly downsized to just a handful. The division did however not receive any Panthers, while the number of assault guns was diminished to 33 and there was only one Panzer III left. This meant that the average tank strength for this division was actually diminished by 6 tanks. By contrast, the Wehrmacht Panzer Divisions had apparently received the bulk of the Panzer IV intended for the West, because the 21st Panzer Division grew with 20 Panzer IV. The 2nd Panzer Division grew with 51 Panzer IV, but no Panthers, by the way, while the Panzer Lehr received 28 Panzer IV and 10 Panthers. Altogether, almost 100 Panzer IV for 3 Panzer Divisions, while the 4 SS Panzer Divisions only had an increase of 5 Panzer IV. Just like in the previous month, the Wehrmacht had received double the amount of tanks their brothers of the SS had received in February. There is, in other words, no proof for the prioritization of the SS over the Wehrmacht in tank distribution. On the contrary, the SS tank strength in the West grew with only 45 tanks for 5 divisions, while the Wehrmacht tank strength grew with 99 tanks for only 3 frontline divisions. In comparison between Wehrmacht and SS Panzer Divisions, I have not put the Reserve Panzer Divisions in the equation, because these were not frontline units but training outfits. There was, however, a slight shift to more modern tanks, because the 273rd Reserve Panzer Division lost 4 Panzer III but gained 6 Panzer IV and 5 assault guns, although the number of required main battle tanks for both types declined by 6, and the number of required assault guns was brought to 0. The other tank force, the heavy tank battalions, did not gain any strength. The total number of tanks show a mixed picture. The grand total of Panzer III had diminished by 1, while the number of Panzer IV had grown by more than 100 to 505. The amount of Panther tanks had grown by a little more than 50, but the total was still below the strength of just 1 tank battalion. The number of assault guns had grown and the number of Tiger tanks remained the same. In the beginning of March 1944 there were 11 mobile divisions on the Western Front. On paper this was a respectable strength, but in reality there were just over 850 medium tanks and assault guns for these divisions, or an average of 77 tanks per division. This situation even worsened during March, when the Panzer Lehr was transferred to the east with 58th Panzer Corps, followed by the 9th and 10th SS Panzer Divisions, which were commanded by the 2nd SS Panzer Corps. So this command left as well. The 21st Panzer Division was initially also slated for deployment in Hungary, together with Panzer Lehr, in the effort to keep that country into the war, but this order was rescinded. Nevertheless, 3 Panzer Division left the Western Front and took with them 277 tanks, or 1/3 of the tank strength of the Panzer Divisions in the West. Had the 21st Panzer Division left as well as planned, the tank strength in this theater would have dropped to almost half. By the beginning of April, the 12th SS Panzer Division had received just 3 more Panther tanks compared to the month before, while their required number of Panzer III was cut down in half. The division had also been placed under the command of the 1st SS Panzer Corps, together with the 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division. The latter division got 25 new assault guns, but was still 50 assault guns short of its required number. Among the SS divisions, the 2nd SS Panzer Division seemed to get the highest priority, however, because it received 31 Panther tanks and 49 Panzer IV, altogether 80 main battle tanks, but it lost 1 Panzer III. No other Panzer Division on the Western Front had received so many tanks in such a short time span since the summer of 1943. In my opinion, the German High Command consciously prioritized disexperienced SS divisions in terms of tank allocation over the newer but inexperienced SS divisions. You can see the same trend with the Wehrmacht Panzer Divisions, where the experienced 2nd Panzer Division got almost its full complement with 68 new Panther tanks, while the inexperienced 21st Panzer Division got only 20 new Panzer IV. The inexperienced 179th Reserve Panzer Division gets a big batch of 51 Panzer IV, but this is in the context of the conversion of this division into the 116th Panzer Division. This training division was merged with the highly experienced but depleted 16th Panzer Grenadier Division to form this new Panzer Division, which was intended for deployment at the Eastern Front. The gradual conversion of Reserve Panzer Divisions into frontline Panzer Divisions meant that the number of Panzer III tanks in these divisions was reduced. In the case of the 155th Panzer Division, it was scaled down to just one tank, under the required amount of tanks, while the division got one extra Panzer IV. The 116th Panzer Division almost phased out all Panzer III and only retaining 6 of them, while its required number of assault guns was ramped up to 10. In this context, it should be noted that the division got its full complement of Panzer IV by the arrival of the aforementioned 51 Panzer IV. The only Reserve Panzer Division left was the 273rd, and even this division had lost 4 of its Panzer III. It was clear that this tank type was on its way out during the preparation of the Panzer Divisions in the West for the Allied invasion. On February 1st there were 147 Panzer III, but by April 1st just over half were left. There was a doubling of the number of Panther tanks, but altogether the number was enough to outfit just over one tank battalion on paper, and the number of Panzer IV had dwindled and was just enough to outfit 4 tank battalions on paper for 6 Panzer divisions in the West. Even the number of assault guns had almost halved due to the departure of the 3 aforementioned Panzer divisions. The only consolation was that the 101st SS Panzer Battalion got its full complement of Tiger tanks. On the ground, the SS Tiger battalions were moved to new locations. The 101st SS was moved from Mazières near Mons in Belgium to Beauvais, while the 102nd SS moved in the other direction from Archival to Wezep in the Netherlands. The departure of the 10th SS Panzer Division from Normandy to the Eastern Front led to the move of the 12th SS Panzer Division to this position, and the 1st SS Panzer Corps moved from Brussels to Subtai. In any case, the 12th SS Panzer Division had to vacate Beverlo for the 1st SS Panzer Division coming from the Eastern Front for rest and refit on the Western Front. The departure of the 9th SS Panzer Division from the Nîmes area in southern France precipitated the move of the 155th Reserve Panzer Division from Fougères to southern France. The newly created 116th Panzer Division moved to the Seine River. By April 1st, the number of Panzer divisions had not only diminished with 3 divisions, but it received 2 Panzer divisions which had to rebuild in terms of vehicles and other equipment. Compared to February, 3 Panzer divisions had also a significant diminished official strength of main battle tanks, while the 2nd Panzer Division got a significant increase in required strength. The 2nd Panzer Division had also been allocated almost a full complement of tanks. The other Panzer Divisions also increased their strength, but had by no means the full complement. If we consider the Panzer Divisions with over 100 tanks as a required strength, only 2 divisions almost reached their full strength, the 21st and the 2nd Panzer Divisions, which reached at least 95%. The other Panzer Divisions in the same category did not reach that level of strength and were on average at 60% strength. The average strength of Panzer Divisions over 100 tanks was 75%. The overall average actual strength of the 7 Panzer Divisions was 100 tanks, by the way. On paper, the situation of the German armored force in the West did not look too bad, but overall it was weak in equipment and training. The slow buildup of tanks meant that there was little opportunity for the practice of large-scale tank maneuvers. This whole situation was exacerbated by the rationing of fuel, which curtailed the necessary crew training. The armored force was also too much dispersed to form an effective counter-strike force in the decisive first day after a potential Allied landing. The Panzer divisions were also mostly positioned inland, so even if the Allies had landed in their sector, it would take them time to get to the coast. Unfortunately, there are hardly any records of the tank strength of the Panzer divisions on the Western Front on May 1st. The 116th Panzer Division saw an increase of its required number of Panther tanks to 73, but received no tanks of this type. The 102nd SS Tank Battalion also saw a rise of its required number of tanks to 45 and had received 6 Tiger tanks by May 1st. During the first half of May, there were, however, significant movements of armored forces on the Western Front. The 58th Panzer Corps had returned to the Western Front and moved to Toulouse, and the 47th Panzer Corps had arrived in northern France. The 21st Panzer Division was moved from the Rennes area towards Caen, and for a moment the Allies feared that the 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division would be moved to the Rennes area as well, which did not materialize. The Panzer Lehr returned, however, to the Western Front and was remarkably far away from the coast at Le Mans. The 273rd Reserve Panzer Division at Bordeaux was merged with the incoming remnants of the 11th Panzer Division. The remaining Reserve Panzer Division at Nîmes was merged with the incoming remnants of the 9th Panzer Division. Although this meant that there were no more Reserve Panzer Divisions at the Western Front, it gives the false impression of the genuine state of affairs, as these divisions were only Panzer Divisions on paper and were in the process of re-equipping. On the eve of D-Day, in the beginning of June 1944, the state of the German armed forces on the Western Front had not much improved in terms of tanks. The 12th SS Panzer Division had received new Panther tanks, but was still 31 Panthers short of the required number. It had also received a handful of Panzer IV and was only 3 Panzer IV short of the required amount. It had even received 2 Panzer III tanks. The 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division received a little more than a dozen assault guns, but the shortfall in assault guns was remedied by downscaling the number of required assault guns to 42. The 2nd SS Panzer Division had only received 1 Panzer IV, while the required number of Panther tanks was augmented by 30, and the number of required Panzer IV was downsized by more than 20. Most remarkably, the division received 42 assault guns, but its number of required assault guns also grew by a whopping 75 assault guns. On the other hand, the number of required Panzer III dropped to 7, but they lost all their tanks of that type on the roster. In terms of tank distribution, the 1st SS Panzer Division was high on the priority list. The division was supposed to have 94 Panther tanks, 94 Panzer IV, 30 assault guns and 14 Panzer III, according to their required order of battle on March 1st, 1944. On June 1st, 3 months later, the division had 38 Panther tanks, 50 Panzer IV and 45 assault guns, almost a similar amount of tanks as the 2nd SS Panzer Division, which had arrived 2 months earlier. In terms of required main battle tanks, this division was also to have 81 Panthers and 101 Panzer IV, just like the 12th SS Panzer Division. Unlike this division, the 1st SS Panzer Division was required to have 45 assault guns and 21 Panzer III. In any case, the SS Panzer Divisions were by no means up to strength, often missing dozens of tanks, especially Panther tanks. By comparison, the Wehrmacht Panzer Divisions were doing much better. The 21st Panzer Division at least had more than 100 Panzer IV, although the number of required Panzer IV had been augmented by several dozen. It had also got a dozen extra assault guns, by which it reached the required number of assault guns, while the remaining French tanks were phased out. The 2nd Panzer Division in turn was just a few tanks away from a complete set of Panzer IV and Panthers on the roster. The return Panzer Lehr was even better equipped with 1 extra Panzer III, 99 Panzer IV, 89 Panther tanks, 41 assault guns and 8 Tiger tanks. In terms of numbers, the Panzer Lehr Division was the strongest armored division on the Western Front. In terms of Panthers, it was 10 tanks above required strength, a rarity as most Panzer divisions in the West were woefully under strength in respect to Panthers, or had no Panther tanks at all. The number of required Panzer IV had however been diminished to 103, and this explains the near full strength complement of Panzer IV. The number of assault guns was also 10 pieces above the required strength, while the number of Tiger tanks was 6 tanks below strength, meaning that it should have 1 company strength of Tigers. The 9th Panzer Division lost all its Panzer III tanks and assault guns, but almost got its full complement of Panzer IV. The 11th Panzer Division also almost lost all Panzer III, all assault guns, and almost doubled its complement of Panzer IV. It was also meant to have 79 Panthers. This meant that in terms of main battle tanks, all former Reserve Panzer Divisions had between 70 and 75 Panzer IV tanks, but none of them had any Panther tanks. All these divisions had discarded almost all their Panzer III, both on paper and on the roster, with the exception of the 116th Panzer Division, which received 4 of these tanks while it was actually supposed to have none, and lost 8 Panzer IV. The 102nd SS Tiger Battalion received more than 20 new Tiger tanks and was well above half its establishment, but still 16 tanks short of a full complement. The last addition to the armoured force in Western Europe was the arrival of the 19th Panzer Division. This division was however depleted from intense fighting on the Eastern Front and brought no tanks with it. It was indicative of the situation on the Western Front. Most divisions were in the process of refitting or training. This meant that on the eve of D-Day, most divisions were below strength in terms of tanks and had not been able to perform exercises with the full complement of equipment. In terms of main battle tanks, the number of Panzer III saw a dramatic fall to a few dozen, while the number of Panzer IV grew with more than 200, as the number of Panther tanks as well. This meant that there were only 1,000 modern main battle tanks in the Panzer divisions, which were strengthened somewhat by more than 200 assault guns and a little over 80 Tiger tanks. The overall tank force seemed to have grown, but when we analyze closer, then a different picture arises. The number of required tanks had grown, partly due to the conversion of Reserve Panzer Divisions into frontline Panzer Divisions, but the tank allocation had not kept up with the same pace. Ironically, the level of tank allocation had dropped by 3% since the beginning of April, and then we are not counting in the 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division. If we look at the real tank strength, it's apparent that the strongest Panzer divisions are Wehrmacht divisions, namely the Panzer Lehr and 2nd Panzer Division. The Waffen-SS divisions were by no means prioritized, as is evident from the 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division, which had not even 1 main battle tank after more than half a year. In any case, only 2 out of 9 divisions were somewhere near at full strength, with the exception of the 9th Panzer Division, which had only 1 tank battalion. In terms of deployment, there was no marked difference with the previous month. The Panzer divisions were mostly spread out over much of France, but nevertheless 4 of them were in or close to Normandy, while there was only 1 Panzer division in the sector of Calais, where the Allied landing was anticipated. On paper it didn't look too bad, but as we have seen during our analysis, most Panzer divisions were seriously under strength because they were in the process of formation or rebuilding. Basically, France was used as a place for training or re-equipping, and as a result, no Panzer division was truly ready for the onslaught when it came. Thank you for watching my video. If you like my content, please subscribe, comment and like. And if you would like to support my work, buy me a coffee. The link is in the description.